Colleagues, good evening. May I request...
Recording in progress.
Write the agenda for tonight. Which is fine. Right. Colleagues, this is the agenda for tonight. Besides the preliminaries, those first two items, we have the presentation from the NCACC. It's on their quarterly report. And feedback on matters outstanding from the previous quarter. And the second one is the DCAC update on further progress in addressing industry concerns raised on 3rd November 2022 and ensuring adequate administrative capacity to the industry. And then the third item, it's the report on our visit to Rheinmetall, Denel Munition, and Damen Shipyard. And then we do the minutes and close the meeting. So, so essentially, today our guest is the head of Secretariat, Advocate Jade. Let me just check if there are any apologies, colleagues. Nandi, are there any apologies?
Good evening, Chair. Yes, I've got 4 apologies. Mr. Hwase, Mr. Ryder, Mr. Nchabeleng, and the Minister.
All right. No, thank you very much. Colleagues, those are the 4 apologies that we are presenting to the meeting. Do we accept? Is there any objection to us granting those apologies? No objection. Thank you very much. I think it's my opportunity now to welcome all present. I wish to welcome the DM in the meeting. DM, good evening and welcome.
Honorable Chair and
yes,
members of the Joint Standing Committee on Defense, good evening.
Thank you very much, DM. Advocate Jade. Thank you. Advocate Jade, good evening.
Good evening, Chairperson and members of the Joint Standing Committee.
Thank you. Let me grant you the opportunity, Advocate Jade, to take us through. But as you do it, may I make this special request that there are slides that I would request that even if you don't present them, because you have been doing it in the past, you've done it many times before, just go to that quarterly information. I can't remember what slide number is as your first slide. Just go down so that you can see where we're going. The quarterly reports.
Through you, Chair, it will be called slide number 14.
Slide number 14.
Yes.
Right. Slide number 14. We want to check if we are together on that one. Okay, right. Maybe you can start with the one before this, and then okay. You can do your preliminary remarks and then start from here.
Okay, good evening, Chairperson, members of the Joint Standing Committee on Defense. We are pleased to present the third quarter NCACC results. And these results are presented as per requirement in terms of the NCACC Act, which is the act under which we fall, and the governing act, alongside the regulations as well as the control lists. It pleases me to present these figures or statistics, which are the figures that are from 1st of July to the 31st of September, this being calendar month evaluation or assessment, as opposed to how sometimes the financial year runs. Next slide, please. The NCACC received and processed the following. Registration certificates for Q3 were 41 applications approved, and there were 4 applications that were approved for marketing. And these are enablers to ensure that entities that are actually registered can then market their products. In the same period, the NCACC received and approved 55 contracting permits. These are an authorization by the committee that the applicant or the title holder can then engage in setting up or agreeing to terms of contracting. And there was only 1 application that was denied in that period, and the total value of those 55 permits as approved resulted in the contract value of 7.9 billion rands, and that was contracting by South Africa with 28 countries. And subsequent to that, the same period presented opportunities for export, which was 162 permits issued with a quantum value of 853.6 million rands, and the total countries exported to were 31. Next slide, please. Imports then were 81 permits authorized with a quantum value of 3.4 billion rands, and that was importation from 24 countries. And there were 2 permits that were authorized, which were transit permits. And these are permits that are issued to assist countries that are neighboring, that are landlocked, and that would require to access their products through South Africa. And then we had exports which were dual use and technology. These are now different from the previous exports as indicated. These were 23 applications with a value of 33.8 million rands, and that is to 11 countries. As is standard, next slide, please. I tend to go back and then compare these to the years previous of the same period. We have covered that, therefore I'll say next slide, please. Next slide, please. This is therefore then the representation of a comparison between 2023 and 2022 Q3, where we had 853.6 million rands worth of exports to 31 countries as compared to 818 to 41 countries, which is a positive, even if it's a marginal indicator of an increase. Next slide, please. For the same period, imports as well, they were quite high, 3.4 billion rands imported from 24 countries as compared to 25 million rands of the previous year. And this is quite a large increase. Next slide, please. At the last time, 1st September, when I appeared in front of the committee, I indicated these service level agreements that are between the Department of Defense and CITAM We receive our funding from the Department of Defense, as well as we serve under the contracts that actually are in place between the Department of Defense and its service providers. In this case, for IT, this being CETA. The top part therefore then represents the old system for financial years 22-23 as well as 23-24. The bottom part, just below the red line or the red wording, indicates the maintenance costs for the new functional system. It's got slightly more SLA agreements in place because of the system being new. Next slide, please. The committee would recall that when I presented, I indicated that the very same system that is under consideration or under development crashed, with the result that some items needed to be purchased or would need to be purchased in order to get us to where we would actually say we have a system that is functional and that is actually serving the needs of the directorate in order to then serve the needs of the industry. Next slide, please. This then elicited the following: a requirement for both hardware and peripherals, and that is the risk mitigation, because we actually essentially had equipment that was bought, I don't want to say prematurely, but it was brought about six and a half years ago, and the equipment is actually out of warranty, and that is why there is a high level of obsolescence. And the cost of replacement for that in today's terms is 9.96 million rands. And I added in some operational costs there, which is line 4 and 5, which were the licensing for 2023 in terms of the inflation rates, and then licensing support. This is up to the end of the financial year. That culminates in a subtotal B, which is 1.2 million rands. But because the system itself also attracts costs in terms of the service level agreement, we then, as at that date, had about 882,000 rands that we needed to actually, cater for. With the result that the amount that was required as at that date was 12.1 million rands. Next slide, please. The amount now being 12.135 has had to be adjusted, where we had to separate both the CAPEX requirements, the OPEX requirements, as well as the ongoing cost of operations. And these are reflected below. Next slide, please. The SLA that is in place, and that is actually a requirement up to year to date, is 3.256 million rands. And if we were to go live, which we had planned to do by the end of this month, it would actually then say towards the end of the year, we needed to provide about 2 million rands of that. And that gives us that 5.3 million rands. Next slide, please. If one considers that 5.3 I've just spoken about now, it then means that 12.1 that we reflected earlier have been adjusted, where we removed the outstanding invoices. The figure then would have come to 11.2, with the additional outstanding invoices and provision until the end of the financial year, which is 2.6 million rands. And then the concurrent service level agreements of both the existing system as well as the system that is going to be ramped up. The provision, therefore, then becomes 5.345 million rands, with a result of a requirement for funding of 19.2 million rands. Next slide, please. The status final as at today is that the project recovery plan is in place, funding to be allocated by the Department of Defense, And CMIs and SETA will work in collaboration to begin implementation of the system recovery plan. And then post-implementation testing will precede going live. And we plan to go live as planned the beginning of 23 December, which therefore then means the period in December will be used primarily for testing and finalizing the going live, such that come the beginning of next year, we are therefore then ready to roll with this new system. Training has been provided both to our directorate, the inspectorate, and we will just provide minimal training to the service or sister agencies, which is your DI, SSA, DERCO, SAPS, because they also need to have access to the system in terms of the review processes that they provide to the system when we evaluate applications, especially when we take them through to the scrutiny committee for recommendation in order to then present that to the NCACC for the final approval. Next slide, please. I think that is the end of the presentation, Chairperson and members of the Joint Standing Committee.
Thank you very much, colleagues. Let me thank Advocate Jele for his presentation. Colleagues, the matters are on the table now for engagement. Over to you, Mr. Mare, I see your hand.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Advocate Jele, for the presentation. I think it's really straightforward. Two questions from my side, just to reconfirm that money that you've talked about that will be rolled out and spent. I'm just concerned about whether that is money to be spent only in this financial year, and whether you have got enough money to roll out that starting in 1st of December, and then in practice beginning of January. Because if you cannot roll it over, then one must obviously take cognizance of the fact that you are losing the money that you're not going to spend. But I just want to make sure that you've got more than enough money to implement that system, because I think that is critical for us, critical for you, critical for the industry, and obviously our economy require that as well. If I can just ask something that relates to the presentation that you have mentioned. I just wanted to make sure for myself, because we don't get reminded of all the rules, every time. When someone applies for an export or an import permit, am I correct that is valid for 45 days? That you can apply for an extension, I think once, but not a second time. And if it passes that 45 days the second time, that implies that either the importer or the exporter must reapply for that export or import permit. Am I correct in that? And then, if that is the case, do you then report again to us, in that specific quarter that reapplication has been done, or how would we know whether there are permits that have lapsed and have got reapplications? Just to get my head around that as well. Just again, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Advocate Jele. That was 2 questions, 3, all crisp.
Should I respond, Chairperson?
Yes, please do.
Okay. As at now, I can assure the committee that in terms of how we've cast our budget, we should be having enough money to take us through the line up to the end of the financial year. But request the committee to look at the amounts to be spent as follows. The amount that is about 11 million rands, it's really for hardware that would be not repeated, and that would actually need to be spent in order to get the system going. In other words, by the time we say the system is now going live, we ought to have replaced those servers, the racks, the connecting cables, and everything else that is relevant there too. The normal budgeting cycle then kicks in place where when we do our estimates of what we would require in the next financial year, we'll then cover the aspect that is in relation to the service level agreements and the licensing fees. Those are the ones that are repeatable and that are not being reflected in this amount now twice because they're actually expendable up to the end of the financial year. Meaning the plan must be in place that when the next financial year starts, you then can reflect what your requirements are for those, and that is your operational expenditure because it relates to those things that we have to pay for in order to get the system, but no longer the capital expenditure that would have been for the servers and all that, because that shall have been bought and it shall have been done with. So I'd like to think that we are covered as far as that is concerned. What we don't do or cannot do is to actually provide for contingency for a system crash. Because even the current crash caught us such that in my direct threat, we do not have the money. That's why it has got to be requested for to come out of the corporate funding mechanism of the department. Because if you actually then were to plan for contingency, the likelihood is you'd be locking a lot of resources into, and eventually that may not arise, or in the event it arises, the risk mitigation may necessarily not lie with you. It therefore would mean it is best if the risk is managed elsewhere, but within our own budget, we only reflect that which is within our own means and that is manageable. I hope I've provided some justice to that response. The second one is the rules. It is true indeed that the applications as issued are valid for 45 days because they essentially are saying when we actually issue them, the requester is saying, I am now ready to actually carry out the transaction of exporting. But schedules sometimes don't work according to plan where either the shipping lanes or lines are congested and you name it and all that. Therefore, the system is lenient then to allow for an extension. However, when that extension has also not been used fully, the system shuts down because it actually implies that the exporter is actually not ready yet. Hence the requirement to then begin with essentially saying, start with a request for export. The figures as I present to the committee are essentially of exports that have taken place, meaning actual. Even when we report to the United Nations, we do it on the basis of actuals, not potential. So there is no chance of a repeat of figures which get recirculated or recycled when it comes to the statistics. I thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Check if there are more hands. Colleagues, it doesn't look like there's more hands. Any other hand? All right. Doesn't look like there's more hands. I assume that the first presentation incorporated the second presentation. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. In other words, matters that the concerns that were raised by the industry, because in the main was one, your accessibility. I think I'm not too sure if that was addressed, the accessibility of the office, and two, the fact that you're still using the old system. And so I think it's good news that you are working hard to migrate to a new system that is digital and would actually make the ease of business. Will make it easy to do business. And all right. So if there are no further questions, colleagues, I would then think that we should release the advocate, unless I'm wrong. Okay.
I think, Chair, it was a relatively straightforward report and for interpretation. So I think you're quite right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Advocate Jele, thank you very much for your presentation. And in fact, each time you make a presentation, it's of course like we're hearing it for the first time, but it becomes clearer and clearer and clearer. Maybe it's because we now have an understanding of what to expect from the presentation. It's likely the figures, the changes year to year, and so on. And of course, you are giving us the report, including the number of countries you are importing to or exporting to, and so on and so forth. I think we'll leave it at that for now, and really thank you, and then say that you can exit at any time when you really want to. Thank you so much. Colleagues,
thank you, Chairperson and members of the committee. I shall actually withdraw now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think
Good evening.
Yes, thanks, Advocate. I think that exhausts matters that we had invited the NCACC on to deal with. Sorry, and that then takes us to the last item. DM, thank you very much. It was a short meeting today, and I also saw the acting CFO. Acting CFO, good evening.
Good evening, Chair and members of the Joint Standing.
Thank you very much. And okay, colleagues, DM.
Chair, as we withdraw, Chair, we must express our indebtedness to the Chair's brevity of the meeting today. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, the meeting is so I think you are free to leave DM and the team from the DOD. We can now quickly move to the last item, the minutes.
Sorry, Chair, it's not the minute, it's the report first, Chair.
Oh, I see. Our report. Okay. Please take us through the report on our visit to RDM as well as the main shipyard.
Good evening, Chair. Is my screen visible on your side?
Yes, it is, Advocate. Sorry, Doc.
Thank you for the new title, Chair. Sticking with the theme of brevity, as the Deputy Minister said, this is quite a short report for our one-day visit to RDM and Diamond Shipyard. It's an 8-page report that was submitted to members. I will just go through it quickly and then maybe go through the observations and the recommendations in that. As members recall, it was a visit to RDM in Somerset West and Diamond Shipyard in Cape Town on the Friday, the 3rd of November. And this relates back to the committee's study tour to Germany, where we engaged with RDM, with Rheinmetall in Germany, and also the committee's ongoing work around the SA Navy, looking at Project Byro. So that's where just the background to where this came from. There's the list of members that formed part of the oversight visit. And there's also a list of the representatives from the various entities that we visited. Then there's a short capture here of the presentation by the CEO of RDM, as well as other input that was made. And then observations by the committee, or during engagements with the RDM, the committee made the following observations. The committee observed that no dividends were paid to Denel over the past 2 years, but that profits were instead reinvested to increase RDM's production capacity in order to increase future profits. This was done with the full approval of all stakeholders, including Denel. The committee also noted that regular engagements between all stakeholders take place, including between RDM and Denel, and that RDM regularly reports to the supervisory board. RDM claimed to have a good relationship with the Directorate for Conventional Arms Control, and that RDM makes use of a dedicated single point of contact between itself and the DCAC. However, the committee observed previous inputs that the industry, including RDM, would like to see a quicker shift to a fully digital and industry-friendly administrative service from the DCAC. And I think we saw some progress in that regard tonight. Then in terms of legacy product production for the SANDF, the committee observed that such production requires an entirely new production line to be set up, and that this may cause problems in terms of delivering products on time. As a means to overcome problems, RDM holds monthly management meetings with Armscor. The committee also noted observations from RDM that the company needs to strike a balance between supporting the home market, but also be globally competitive. If the SANDF was on new systems, it could make use of cheaper ammunition produced for global markets and, for example, purchase overruns and at prices lower, purchase overruns at prices lower than premiums for a small special run exclusively for the SANDF. The committee observed that RDM was also affected by the declining defense budget in South Africa. The committee observed that RDM maintains a number of internal audits and is externally audited by Deloitte. In relation to the loss of the Nelson counter missile contracts with foreign navies, the committee observed that RDM also lost on potential income as it produced parts of the missile. However, RDM continues to provide a maintenance service to the counter missiles in use with the SA Navy. In terms of the maritime transport of ammunition, the committee observed that RDM complies with international standards and the Maritime Safety Act when transporting products. Further, chemical products are transported by specialized trucks, which also comply with all the relevant legislation, including environmental legislation. Second from last, the committee observed that RDM has a budget of 6.1 million rand for skills development for military veterans in the current financial year. And lastly, the committee observed that RDM does assist the SANDF through Armscor with the demilitarization of ammunition. Those were the observations around RDM. And there was also a presentation by Damon Shipyard in Cape Town, which is a summary is provided there. And then in terms of the engagement with Damon, in terms of the engagement with the DCAC and the NCACC, the committee observed that while Damon Shipyard Cape Town has a good relationship with the DCAC, it still lacks a transparent and effective communication to the industry. Damon Shipyard Cape Town further welcomed the December 2022 DCAC roadshow that was held in Cape Town to engage industry role players. The committee noted observations made by Damon Shipyard Cape Town that there are opportunities for maritime companies, including Damon Shipyard Cape Town, to bring domestic business to the Armscor dockyard without impacting on the service to the SA Navy. The committee also noted that South Africa needs to be serious about its maritime safety, but that budget cuts are having a major impact on the ability to perform in this regard. The committee observed how other regional navies are expanding their fleets, but that they do not make use of South African shipyards, indicating a need for better engagement with regional counterparts. The committee also observed the importance of the local shipbuilding capabilities and noted that further fleet replacements will be required in the near future, including, for example, the SAS Drakensberg. The committee also observed that South Africa has a large maritime territory to control that was not possible without an adequately equipped navy. The committee noted the stated need for a fourth IPV to be procured, as the planned fleet of 3 IPVs will result in limited operational availability due to deployment and maintenance cycles. Members may recall there was a long discussion about this need for a fourth IPV, in line with the Navy's indication a few years ago that they actually require up to 15 IPVs. And this whole issue was discussed there on the day as well. Lastly, the committee observed that the committee observed that the need for the offshore patrol vessel under Project Pyro remains, and that was based on input again from the Chief Navy that was present. So, Chair and members, based on this background and discussions, we propose the following recommendations from the report. The committee recommends that National Treasury and the SA Navy give strong consideration to the procurement of a fourth IPV, as was made clear in the SA Navy requirements to Parliament in May 2023, as this will ensure increased operational availability, less affected by deployment and maintenance cycles. However, this should be considered against all needs of the SANDF in broad and the SA Navy in particular, aimed at ensuring the country's territorial integrity. Chair and members, I just want to pause here. We added specifically this sentence to make it clear that this recommendation, which was mentioned during the day by members, we added this section here to not make it seem that this committee is pushing for a purchase from a specific supplier, or that this must be prioritized above other Navy needs. Just that the committee is aware of the previous requirements from the Navy for additional IPVs, and that it understands how additional IPVs will improve operational availability, but that this committee is not addressing specific needs through this recommendation. Secondly, the committee also advises that the seventh Parliament to further investigate naval acquisition needs over the medium to long term and advise Parliament, the DoD and National Treasury on these matters. So that will also be included, if members agree, that this could be a nice recommendation to include in the legacy report of this committee. Next, the Department of Defense should submit a written report to the committee on the breakdown of expected sea hours over the medium term, given currently funded maintenance programs, and two, how these would reflect if a fourth IPV should enter service. This should be submitted within 30 days of the adoption of this report. Next, Chair and members, that recommendation again links to the previous one, as it will allow this committee in the next term and the seventh Parliament to track sea hours, and also to see how this could be impacted by potential additional vessel availability. Lastly, the committee recommends that the Joint Standing Committee of Defence in the seventh Parliament again visits RDM to have a follow-up engagement on the company's support to the SANDF and to view their production facilities in full. So, as members may note here, a lot of reflection on the seventh Parliament and inclusion of these aspects in the legacy report. This committee has worked on these matters a lot over the past 5 years, and it will be very valuable to include these last wrap-up engagements in the legacy report for the seventh Parliament. Then we just concluded with that the committee wishes to thank the management of RDM and Diamond Shipyard Cape Town for its willingness to host the committee and for its continued support to the SANDF. Chair, I submit, and I'll be happy to make any changes that members may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much for summarizing the presentation as well as the deliberations on the day. And colleagues, the matters are on the table for comments before we adopt the report.
Chairperson, just from my side, excellent report. I think it's a very, very comprehensive, and I cannot fault this report at all.
Thank you
very comprehensive.
Thank you very much, Mr. Murray. There is Honorable Moremati Motapo.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson and colleagues. I would also like to follow suit and commend Dr. Belem and Nandipa for a well-captured recommendation and report. I second Honorable Murray.
Thank you very much. So the report has been moved and seconded. Is there any objection? Let me just look at the screen. No objection. Colleagues, that then takes care of this item. The report is duly adopted. Thank you very much, colleagues. Can we then move to the minutes? How many sets?
Chairperson, just before we move to the minutes, just an observation from my side. We have lately looked at UAVs and technology, and we've been to Milkor. In the quarterly reports, the report itself, I haven't asked Advocate Jelly because I know he cannot give us all the details, but I have picked up that there was an import permit issued for UAVs from China under the category combat aircraft, and it was 14 of them. So in other words, if that is probably not Arms Corps for the Defence Force, so it might be someone else importing that for maybe, to re-export again, or it might be police. But it shows you how important that has become, UAVs, and that we are actually on the right track, to push for that as well. And that is how timely our visit to Milkor also was. So I just wanted to convey that observation of mine. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's an acceptable observation, profound. Thank you very much, Mr. Marais. Can we then deal with the minutes? How many sets? It's 2 sets, one?
2 sets, Chair.
2 sets, okay. Let's start with this one. Meeting of the 9th of November. This is the attendance on the day. If there are any correction, be careful. Inkatha, secondly, you can see that red line under the word Inkatha. It means it's wrongly spelled out. Please take note of that. All right. Go to page 2. Go to page 3. If there are any questions of clarity or corrections. Page 4. Page 5. And the last page. All right. Thank you very much, colleagues. I present these minutes. Do you accept them?
I propose.
Mr. Marais proposes. Any seconder? I need to get a seconder, colleagues.
No one wants to second this report. What is wrong with this report?
Lekwase seconds. Thank you very much. The minutes are actually adopted. Let's move to the next set. Again, we check for corrections. Minutes of the 16th. This is the attendance. Right. Thank you. Attendance completed. Into the second page, right? Third page. Fourth page. And the last page. Right, colleagues, it's my honor to table the minutes, to present the minutes for adoption. Do I get a mover and a seconder?
I move, Chair. Hopefully, shall go in second.
I will second, sir.
Okay, Chabo moves and Maria seconds. Thank you very much, honorable members. The minutes are duly adopted. For next week, colleagues, the legacy report has had to be delayed a bit because of all these reports that had to be prepared for adoption, like the one we're adopting today. And we also had to make a provision for the last minute adoption of the DMV BRRR. All of that take up the time that could have been used to finalize the report. It's still in draft, but we think we'll be ready, not next week, at some other time. Unfortunately, next week is our last meeting. So, and I then request that I push the report to early next year, possibly our first meeting next year. Colleagues, I just...
No problem.
No problem.
No problem.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, no objection. So that then means this is then our last meeting. Nandipa, not so? As this committee this year?
That's true, Chair. Yes, this is the last meeting this year.
Okay. Colleagues, this is our last meeting this year. And I think we've done well. We've worked well as a team. And even those that serve, the colleagues that serve on the NCOP with all the work that takes them right into late hours, but they never tire. As soon as they are done with their work at the NCOP, they join the meeting. So that to me showed a great deal of commitment on their part. We really thank them. There was never a time when they said, hey, we were fresh from the meeting, we're tired, and we now have to join another meeting. Like today, that was the situation. Raider is not in the meeting because he's debating. He was hoping that he would join the meeting at 7. Unfortunately, it will be done by then. So that's the spirit I saw of good, of collegiality, camaraderie, permeating throughout this term. So, colleagues, I think I should thank all of you. And even if we don't meet again as this joint standing committee, but please be aware, please be informed that I really appreciated working with you. And the department, initially it thought we were a bit hard on them, but as soon as they realized that we are playing for the same team where we all have the same objective, the same goals, and they then started, coming around happily and sharing a lot more information to assist us to do our oversight. We appreciated that a great deal. The information that they were releasing to us, it really enabled us to have an insight, into what is going on in the defense, so that especially the defense force, so that we are then able to make recommendations that somehow take the defense force forward. That is the comment on my side.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As an unauthorized co-chair, I also want to thank members.
Hey, yeah, it sounds like a protest.
No, it's not, Chair.
Chair, Just from my side as well, I think this was an incredibly constructive year, in my opinion. I think if you can, and Wilhelm will be able to give you that information also, Nandipa, if you compare to what we have done as a Joint Standing Committee on Defence, this whole Parliament session, this sixth Parliament, and if you look at the last year, I think we've done an incredible amount of work that supersedes by far the previous committee. So thank you to you, and I think to all of us that are always prepared to meet. It doesn't matter the hours of the day or the night. So that I think is a reflection of how well we as a committee and all the members gel, and how we share the serious interest in the safety and security of our country. So thank you to you and to each of the other members as well from my side. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much to our supporters as well. This work could not have been possible without your support, especially Nandipa and Velem. And we were understaffed, but there was never a time where we could feel that our support is understaffed. And thank you very much for that. All right, with that, colleagues, thank you very much. The meeting is adjourned. Good night.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Sis Kos.